Hello and welcome to the Action Network podcast, UFC betting preview. I'm Sean Zerillo, joined today by Billy Ward to help you break down a 13-fight card for UFC London going down on Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Eastern for the main card, 6-fight main card. The main event, Leon Edwards about plus 130 against Sean Brady, minus 155. Fight goes to decision about minus 190. Fight to end inside the distance, roughly plus 150. About 40% implied. And if you'd like to tail some of the bets that we discussed both for the main event and on today's show, make sure to find the quick slip links in the podcast and video description, or go to actionnetwork.com/bet now. Billy, I'll have a main event preview up for this fight on actionnetwork.com. I believe we are leaning to opposite sides of this contest. I actually just entered a bet in the Action Network app on Leon Edwards at plus 140. The rest of the market was trending closer to plus 130. Seemed like plus 140 was the peak. The market had sort of trending up in his direction. I think it hit its peak at 140, and after weigh-ins is starting to come back down. So if you like Leon, I think you can jump in at the current price point. I don't think it's going to improve much. If you like Sean Brady, you might be able to wait a little bit closer to fight time to pick off a better number. Are you planning on finding a number on Brady that you like, Billy, or are you just leaning his direction in terms of the fight and you're happy to watch this one?
Yeah, mostly the second one. I've had a bad run lately. Every main event fighter I bet on just gets poked in the eye a bunch of times, and I don't want to put that evil on Sean Brady because I'm a big fan of his. But no, I'm truly torn on this one. Sean Brady, in theory, can execute the exact same game plan that Belal Muhammad did against Leon Edwards, right? He's got all the same skill set, even same physical build, big, strong guy. Like, that all should work. Leon Edwards is claiming that he wasn't, his full strength at that one because the fight was at 5 a.m. And that actually makes a ton of sense. Normally fighters say that and you go, yeah, no one's 100%. I actually kind of believe that one more than I usually do. And then I also worry about that grappling and pace over 5 rounds for Brady. Mm-hmm. Obviously, he's, he got knocked out by Muhammad, so you could argue the striking differential is a little bit bigger there for Edwards this time around. I don't have strong feelings. I'm considering a live bet on Leon Edwards if it blows up early, because if Brady can get a takedown but not really do much with it and we get plus 250 or something on Edwards, that's probably where I'd jump in. Other than that, I'm probably just going to stay out of it. Hopefully nobody gets poked in the eye, which is no guarantee in a Leon Edwards fight because he likes to do some of that too. So just hoping for a clean fight and possibly some live betting entries.
Yeah, Leon, first fight against Belal Muhammad, I poked him. He was looking great in that fight in the Apex. I poked him. They ended up rematching for the title, and Belal took the belt off of him. And Leon looked flat throughout that fight, looked kind of disinterested at points, did out-grapple Belal in the later rounds. Third and fifth round, argument for winning the fifth round. Third round, he clearly won, but took Belal's back at one point. And as you said, I think this is a similar matchup for Sean Brady as it was for Belal Muhammad in terms of being able to impose as well stylistically, the strength with the takedowns. But can he consolidate the takedowns for long enough? Can he submit Leon before Leon is able to scramble back to his feet and land more damage? Because in England, Leon, every strike that he lands, the crowd's going to be popping. But also the damage optics are going to be in his favor. I really do think Sean Brady probably needs a submission or ground and pound finish in order to win this fight. Otherwise, I think he's really going to be up against it with the judges. And also severe durability edge for Leon Edwards here too. Seeing the way Belal Muhammad put away Sean Brady once Brady wasn't able to get takedowns in that fight. He went over 5 in that fight. I think the more resistance Edwards shows to takedowns here, the better he's going to look throughout the fight. I trust his cardio in the later rounds, and I trust his ability to put on damage on Sean Brady in the later rounds. So Brady, as you said, can have early success, maybe lands a takedown in the opening round, maybe the line blows out just a little bit more. Happy to jump in on a live bet on Leon Edwards anytime live after round 1, maybe live after round 2 is the best inflection point, because in a 3-round fight, I think this price is kind of fine. I'm fine with Brady around minus 155 in a 3-round fight, but not in a 5-round fight. I do not trust him to be able to impose his style for 3 out of the 5 rounds. 2 out of the 3 rounds, I could see it. Not in 3 out of 5, given Leon's likely cardio edge, and also the damage that Leon's going to be putting on him in the clinch. Leon, one of the best clinch fighters in this sport. You really saw him deter Kamaru Usman from entering the clinch just because of all the knees and elbows and stuff he fires when Usman tried to get it on the hips to get it into a takedown, Leon made him pay for it. And I think he's going to do the same with Sean Brady here. So Brady better finish him on the mat. Otherwise, I think Leon eventually recovers, works his way back up, and lands more damage, especially over the final 15 minutes of the fight. So I'm fine with Leon on the money line down to about plus 125. And I also like his knockout odds at 7-1 all the way down to 6-1 or better. Billy, any other prop thoughts on this fight? Any thoughts on the total? Interested in plus money on the fight ends inside the distance before we move on to our fight of the night?
Yeah, I was about to jump in and say on the ends inside the distance, it kind of makes sense to me. It's a weird mix because basically all of Sean Brady's fights end inside the distance and none of Leon Edwards do. But both guy has what should be a fairly clear path to a finish. And it feels like if Brady's getting takedowns, he does a very good job of scoring both the strikes and submissions when he does get takedowns. And at the same time, if he's forced to stand with Leon Edwards for 10, 15 minutes of a 25-minute fight, you kind of expect Leon to finish him there. So I would lean that way as well. Might throw something on that depending on how the night is going for me up until that point. Last thing to add, the one, I guess, pushback. While I broadly believe Leon about his performance being thrown off by the time change and all that stuff, he didn't look great against Colby Covington in the fight before that either. He won, but it was eh. And so you can almost poke holes in all of his recent wins because Usman was getting up there in years and has probably fallen off a little bit. Usman dominated him in the first fight until Edwards got the knockout. Second fight, Edwards won, but it wasn't like a super thrilling high output performance. So there's some risk here that Edwards is maybe kind of lucked into winning the title when he did. Long win streak. I don't want to take anything away from him. I'm not saying that's the likeliest outcome, but it's a possibility.
Last thing I want to throw at you, the decision only and the finish only markets. Leon is plus money in both. He's plus 110. Brady is minus 150 in decision only. Leon is plus 150. Brady minus 210 in finish only. One of those or both of those is off. I can't tell which one is more off. What are your thoughts on those?
That's the problem though, right? We know one of them has to be.
One of them's off.
My thought would be decision only, but the more I think about it, if it goes to a decision, I think it's going to be really clear for one guy. Like either Brady is getting takedowns every round. He is not a stall from the top kind of takedown guy. He's always doing stuff. Or he can't get takedowns and he's just getting picked apart and like nearly finished. So I guess, finish only for Edwards would probably be the one of those two.
That's what I thought.
I think, because has Edwards ever been submitted? No, I don't believe so. So, like, if we trust his submission defense, you don't think Brady's going to knock him out? Yeah, I would say the finish only would probably be the one I'm playing.
Yeah, plus 150 on Edwards, finish only. I think I would have expected those to be flipped. I think I would have expected, at best, like plus 110 on Edwards, finish only. But yeah, I'm a little interested in that finish only market. I need to see where I project out their finish odds relative to one another. Let me pull that up really quick because that just stands out as interesting to me. Yeah, it's not a huge discrepancy. Like I would make it plus 110. I wouldn't make it plus 150 because I make Edwards a slight underdog, but I give him about 5 to 6% more chance of his own win condition of finishing relative to Brady. So I think plus 110 is fine. Plus 150 seems a little bit off. Edwards finish only, plus 125 or better. I think I'm comfortable playing. Plus 150 seems like it's a bit too long. Let's turn our attention to our fight of the night. Carlos Ulberg about minus 300. Australian kickboxer against Jan Blachowicz at plus 240. This fight is minus 110 to go to a decision, minus 120 to end inside the distance. Jan, the former champion, coming back though at 42 years old, 1.5, nearly 2-year layoff. I think like a 20-month layoff he's returning from. Has had injuries in the past, coming back from shoulder surgery. He pulled out of a fight from. Also has had the neck injuries in the past. If you remember, he submitted very, very quickly to a rear naked choke that wasn't even locked in. Billy, I believe we are technically on opposite sides of this fight. I'm not really sure if I'm betting Jan. You would bet Ulberg or pass. I like your approach taking the spread at minus 3.5 because there's a chance that Jan just physically could be completely shot here or just might be super duper slow coming back at age 42. So how do you see this fight playing out? And then I'll go ahead and give my leans after.
Yeah, I mean, at best, the case for Jan is he can kind of just control him against the fence and get takedowns. It is
Mhm.
hard to do that against Alberg. Even if Jan is at his best, Olberg is a considerably better athlete, I think, here.
Yeah.
Got more power. We talk about the Polish power for Jan, but he has like a below divisional average knockdown rate. That's not real. And he's also, as you pointed out, just turned 42. Had surgery on both shoulders. I don't know if like people listening know anyone 40 and up who's had a shoulder surgery or dealing with shoulders. I've never once heard him say, and now I feel great, or now they're better, or like I got surgery and now everything's fine. Like I know tons of dudes around that age who lift a ton of weights and get shoulder surgery and it never works. And he got him on both shoulders. So there's just massive downside risk that Jan, can barely keep his hands up to defend himself, blocks one high kick and his shoulder goes out, et cetera, et cetera. I'm actually just laying the juice on Olberg at minus 290 because Jan is durable. But yeah, the minus 3.5 at minus 140, or even Olberg inside the distance at plus 150. Jan has been durable. I don't know that at this age, with this layoff, with all the injuries, I believe he even had an ACL surgery in there in his UFC run too, way before the neck. Could be wrong on that one, but I just don't. I'm not betting on a 42-year-old guy coming off multiple shoulder surgeries and a 20-month layoff. It just doesn't. Nothing about that feels right.
Yeah, Olberg is not a young guy himself. I mean, he's already 35, I believe, but in terms of fight damage, athleticism, as you said, speed at this point, there is a massive difference between these two. And Jan, we don't know how much slower he's going to look coming back after that layoff, after another injury at age 42. So definitely downside physically for Jan here. As you mentioned, has the grappling upside, could potentially land takedowns, beat Olberg like he beat Israel Adesanya, though Olberg a little bit bigger than Adesanya, but could see the path to Jan top timing him, pressing him up against the cage. I just don't know what the likelihood of him executing that game plan is, especially in the bigger octagon. Maybe in the apex, you could see it happening a little bit more frequently just because the bodies are going to be pushed closer together. In the bigger cage, I think Olberg should be able to matador him a little bit, stick and move, get out of the way. And as you said, I think Jan's power in general, overrated too. We have seen Olberg get clipped, get hurt in the past. I don't know if Jan is going to be the guy to put him away. I think from top position, absolutely could pound him out. I think Jan's submission odds, long odds, could be worth an interesting poke too, just because that's where he's going to win the fight. If Jan is winning the fight, it's likely he gets this fight to the ground and he's able to threaten submissions. And I don't trust Olberg's submission defense nearly as much as I would a guy like Adesanya, who's been training jiu-jitsu for much longer. Olberg's still relatively new to the sport. He's only been training MMA for about 5 years. So yeah, it's Jan or pass for me on the money line, but very likely a pass just because pure kickboxing fight.
Yeah.
It's tough for Olberg to cover a big price tag. I actually prefer Billy laying the spread as opposed to laying the money line. But I kind of lean to the fight to go to a decision as well. My only concern is Jan's age, just that he's going to look like decrepit coming back off of this layoff, or the injuries crop up again, like he gets hurt at some point in the fight and the fight ends. It's all a possibility that you kind of have to factor in here. But I still projected this fight to go to a decision closer to minus 130, minus 140. I'm interested in the goes to decision at about minus 110. Billy, any other thoughts for this fight before we move on to our top underdogs?
Yeah, one quick thing on the grappling. I just found this to be interesting. He has 8 UFC. Olberg has 8 UFC fights. He has only faced 7 takedown attempts from his opponents, despite everyone knowing that he's a former high-level kickboxer. And that's not a coincidence. That's a credit. I mean, partially it's a credit to the UFC matching him up with some favorable matchups early, but also he manages range really well. He's been almost exclusively in the big cage in his UFC run because they're trying to promote him. And if I don't let you close to me, you can't really even attempt to take down. So I'm not confident in his takedown defense or grappling ability on the ground so much. I'm confident in his ability to just not be in a situation where that matters. And Jan wasn't fast of foot to begin with, so I don't know how he corners him against the fence and limits that. So that's where I'm less worried about the takedown. Even against a guy like Adesanya, who, more skilled overall than Olberg, I think, but I would say Olberg is probably the better athlete, faster, more explosive, all that stuff, and can kind of just run out of those situations and not face the attempt to begin with.
Yeah, good stuff. And, because of that distance management, the fact that he's going to be forcing the fight to more of an outside distance striking match. That is partially the reason I like to go to the decision as well. I don't see a ton of pocket exchanges between these two. I'm just worried about the speed differential. The fact that Jan may realize he's trailing, push forward, trying to land something, and then get countered big by Oberg, and that's the end of the fight. We've seen Jan be super durable, but if there's a massive speed discrepancy between these two, that could lead to a finish. So that has me slightly concerned, but at minus 110, I think I'm okay. Still betting into that. We'll see how significant I size that bet. Number of underdogs, a lot of plus money that we like on this card. Bunch of props we'll get to as well. And then we've each got a couple of money lines in our best bets section. So I'm curious if those are best bets or final bets for Billy. Let's talk about our favorite underdogs, though. One in particular we're aligned on. It's the first fight of the night. Again, don't know how significant of a bet this will be for me, but I do think Caio Fernandez is the value side at plus 340 against Garam Kutateladze. Garam came into the UFC, won an upset victory over Mateusz Gamrot. It was a split decision, but as a result of that win, the fact that he trains with Khamzat Chimaev, I think this guy got a lot of hype, and he's basically disappointed in every single fight since. So, Billy, I want you to break down this fight. I view these guys both as pretty good kicking game, but not a ton else in terms of their overall skill set. I think Garam is the grappling upside, but tell me why you like Fernandez.
Yeah, Fernandez might actually be my best bet here. I'm kind of sprinkling on all the big underdogs here, much like last week where we got Carlos Vera across the line. But Kutateladze just isn't as good as we all want him to be, for lack of a better term. He probably didn't win the split decision against Mateusz Gamrot. It was close. Definitely not a robbery, but And then in his last fight against Jordan Vucenic, got dropped early against the guy coming in on short notice and was lucky to rally back and survive that fight. If Vucenic had even a few weeks to prepare and build some cardio, he almost certainly would have lost. Durham almost certainly would have lost that fight. The other big difference, I agree with you skill-wise, I don't trust Gurham's durability at this point because he got knocked out by Elves Brenner and then dropped immediately in the next fight. So he's been knocked down in each of his last two fights. He should have a grappling advantage, but he doesn't use it, which is part of why he makes all his fights closer than they need to be. And if we're going to play that game for 15 minutes against a guy like Fernandez, who's won most of his fights by knockouts, something bad is probably going to happen at some point there. So it's plus 340. I think I'm doing a quarter unit on 3 underdogs that are all plus 300 or better. This is actually my favorite, and I might sprinkle a little bit more on this knockout prop as well.
I've got one underdog, not quite plus 300, but plus 260 on Felipe Dos Santos against Loner Kavanaugh. Dos Santos is a really good striker, and Kavanaugh, like you said with Kutateladze, not reliable to grapple. So if these two end up striking it out for 15 minutes, I think Santos absolutely covers his plus 260 price tag and makes it more competitive than those odds suggest. 3 inches taller, 3-inch reach advantage, a very competitive striking fight with Manel Kape. I think Kavanaugh, as I said, needs to grapple proactively in order to cover this price tag. I don't necessarily trust him to do that. So based on the stylistic nature of that fight, I think Felipe Dos Santos could be more competitive than plus 260. He has bad takedown defense. I'm just not sure if Kavanaugh is actually going to try to actively expose it. Billy, you've got a couple of other bigger underdogs that you mentioned you want to give out. We also have one consensus underdog that we're going to save for the best bets section. So go ahead and give out your final 2 dogs, and then we'll talk about one of the WMMA fights where we both have plus money.
Yeah, so I'm looking at Andre Puliev against Christian Leroy Duncan. I don't think Duncan is great. I think the UFC has done a good job of giving him favorable matchups. Puliev is like a black box. I wrote him up before his Contender Series fight. I don't think I could find a single full fight of his anywhere, but he looked really good on the Contender Series. I'm not sure that Christian Leroy Duncan is that skilled. He's just that athletic. And he's got outstruck by guys with any kind of striking skill. So he got outstruck by G-Rod and Petrosian. Can Puliev do that? I actually have no idea. But he's got, a lifelong martial arts background. He wasn't a basketball player. At plus 480, that is a quarter unit sprinkle for me. And then the other one is the other Chris Duncan, which makes this confusing to talk about. But lightweight Scottish Chris Duncan, I'm betting on against the aforementioned Jordan Vucenic. Basically, Vucenic, you talk about this all the time. A guy comes in, overperforms in a short notice debut, but loses. The market flips out like he's the next Khabib. And then it turns out he just got like a good punch in there. Plus 350 on Chris Duncan, who's a proven UFC prospect. I believe 3-1 in the promotion. Not beating world beaters or whatever. But to get plus 350 on that, I'm pretty confident that he looks better than that line. We just need to get one of these through to make a profit. I'm kind of comfortable just sprinkling across all of them.
Duncan, a good live bet after round one as well, just because, as you mentioned, with the fight against Gutata Loud's fading after round one. I still have concerns about the cardio across 15 minutes. I think Duncan is a lesser athlete, but if he doesn't die immediately, I think he covers that price and makes it more competitive than the odds suggest. May get a better live price on Duncan after round one. We have one more underdog we're going to talk about. Billy also has a prop on that fight too. But first, March is the best month of the year. We're in the midst of the NCAA tournament. And not just for sports, but also for getting the best deals on Action Pro. Right now, you can get Action Pro for just over $5 a month for the entire year. And since it's March, that means the NCAA tournament is in full swing. So with an Action Pro account, you'll get Sean Kerner's bracket simulations, access to Nick Gibbons' player props, Stuckey's picks 30 minutes earlier than they go out to everybody else, and more. Plus, since it's an entire year of Action Pro, you'll get access to next year's college football and NFL seasons too. Plus, Major League Baseball, UFC this summer, and everything else that'll come up over the next year. So go to actionnetwork.com/March to get on board now. Billy, before we get into our props fully, I do want to touch on Puja Tomar at plus 150 against Shauna Bannon. Tomar, I think, is the better fighter. I'm just concerned about where this fight is taking place and the scoring that may occur because this fight is minus 500 to go to a decision. I think Tomar may win the fight. I'm just not sure if the judges are actively going to score it for her. Now, Shauna Bannon does have a 5 or 6 inch reach advantage, and she's going to be coming forward more. Tomar likes the counter strike. She's very good at it, and this is a very good matchup for her to do it. I'm just worried about the fact that Bannon has that reach advantage, probably lands more volume across 15 minutes, or at least attempts more volume across 15 minutes, just pumping those strikes out there. And the forward pressure optics and the crowd are going to sway the judges, whereas Tomar, I think, is going to be landing the more damaging, more impactful shots. I think she carries more power, and I prefer her kicking game. So Pusha Tomar, I think, is a good bet at plus 150, maybe anywhere but in England against Shauna Bannon. I believe Bannon's Irish, but still going to be getting, the hometown judging and the boost and all that. So a little bit sketched out by this one just because of the nature of where it's taking place, the likelihood that it is a very close and competitive split decision. But as a result, Tomar at plus 150, a good bet if you're assuming it's going to be close and competitive and going to a split. Billy, you're thinking along the same lines here. You're giving out Tomar to win by split or majority decision at plus 700. Go ahead and tell me why, aside from the fact that I just laid it out.
Yeah. I mean, you told me why. So the bigger why here is that I bet on Tomar's money line at plus 150, as you did, but just didn't have any props this fight. I went through and looked through my card. And here's the thought process. I went to that fight. I said, this one has split decision written all over it. Neither of them have great power. Kind of agree with you that Tomar's is better, but it's not by a long shot. Neither of them are going to grapple at all, which makes it hard for a round to look clear. So I was like, let's go and see what the odds are that this goes to a split decision. DraftKings has it at plus 225 to be a split decision, which is just absurdly low for any fight. You're betting on judges to disagree, which is a hard thing to even predict to an extent. So I thought, all right, I'm betting on Tomar. I think it's going to go to a split decision. Put those two together, plus 700 odds. Not a big bet for me. I'll probably throw $10 on that on top of my plus 150 ticket, but that is how I got there. I think the opposite side of that, which is plus 400 on Bannon to win by a split decision, also fine, right?
Yeah.
That wouldn't shock me either, that she probably deserves to lose. One judge refuses to give in to peer pressure, and the other two do. That seems pretty likely to. Have fun with that one. This is not going to be a great fight. It's not going to be an impactful fight for the division, but these are some ways to try to have a little bit of fun with it.
Yeah, I would love to do some analysis going back through fights, especially WMMA fights that are north of minus 400 to go to decision, and see what percentage of them actually go to splits. Because I would imagine in these fights, and to filter by money line range as well, anything maybe less than minus 200, something like that. I feel like when you have these fights that are south of 65% implied and higher than 80% to go to a decision. That's where the splits are going to occur. So could be worth looking into some research just on combining the money line ranges and the total ranges and trying to figure out, logically where the splits may occur, because this one seems to have split written all over it. Another fight that could go to a split just because of the fight IQ of Tainara against Molly McCann. Tainara making her UFC debut. She's very physical, 5-inch reach advantage, looks all the parts of a future champion at 115 pounds if she can continue making the weight. She's an elite athlete. On Dana White Contender Series, she out-wrestled a Brazilian national wrestling champion, and she is a striker. So Tainara, skill-wise, seems to have all the abilities. Molly McCann previously moved down from 125 to 115. As I said, still has that reach discrepancy here. Tainara is also on the supplements, and I don't think she's going to slow down ever across 15 minutes, maybe not even across 25. The concerns there cardio-wise for Molly still exist at 115 pounds. I think Tainara pre-fight wins by decision, and I think live after round one, you could bet her money line in the event that Molly slows down. Morgan Charrier against Nathaniel Wood. Charrier about plus 300 to win inside the distance. I saw as low as minus 125, minus 130 on the money line today. I make his money line closer to minus 145. Billy will get into that fight a little bit more in a bit, but big discrepancy in durability between these two. Wood is the more technical fighter, should put out more output across a 15-minute fight, but Charrier vastly more finishing upside. I made his finish line about plus 275. I saw plus 300. I also made his knockout prop around plus 375 and saw plus 425. So Morgan Charrier to win inside the distance. Wood keeps going to a decision. I think that is likely to end at some point soon, that streak. And then finally, the heavyweight fight between Marcin Tybura and Mick Parkin to go to a decision at minus 125. I think Parkin has enough defensive grappling to be able to neutralize Tybura here, but I don't think he has the power to be able to hurt Tybura or the athleticism to be able to hurt Tybura like the other opponents who have hurt Tybura recently or finished Tybura recently. Parkin is 10 years younger. He's quicker, but I don't view him as a particularly good athlete. I made this fight about minus 160 to reach a decision. Happy to bet it at minus 125. Billy, I know we were going to get to the Charrier fight in a minute, but first, any thoughts on the Tainara McCann fight or on the Parkin Tybura fight?
Yeah, only slight pushback on the decision line is Tainara is coming in on short notice. Molly McCann was supposed to have a much easier matchup here for the fight in London, as they like to give her. And then the other point, I broke her down for the Contender Series, Tainara's fight against the Brazilian national wrestling champion. I don't know how much women's wrestling happens in Brazil. I don't mean to say that, they don't have good grapplers there, but with jiu-jitsu being as popular as it is, I don't know that, that's even a thing. So if you're the women's national wrestling champion, but there's only 3 women in the country in your weight class actually trying, I don't know how much that means. I'm not saying her opponent wasn't a good wrestler, but don't draw too many conclusions from that. And yeah, I love the classic heavyweight over to not super explosive guys. Sure. I mean, I don't want to watch that fight necessarily, so rooting for it to go the distance is kind of like a weird fun way to go with it.
Going to be a lot of hugging on the ground, hopefully. The only Brazilian national wrestling champion I can remember in the UFC is Raoni Barcelos, and Barcelos was really well-rounded, phenomenal skill set, striking and grappling. And you rarely see the guys who can mix the two together. He just upset Peyton Talbot as a humongous underdog. Raoni Barcelos still doing it at age 40, 37. Raoni Barcelos, he looks like he's 40. But it's kind of that being able to combine the jiu-jitsu with the wrestling gives you a very high floor. Even Rodolfo Vieira, like a better wrestler than you typically see from these jiu-jitsu guys. When you have that skill set and you can also wrestle, it gives you a big advantage. I don't know if Tainara has the jiu-jitsu skill set, though. I think she has the wrestling. I actually don't think she has the other half of it, which is the jiu-jitsu. Did you kind of notice that too? She seems to have trouble passing. She was letting her opponent up. It was almost like she wasn't interested in being on the ground once she actually got the fight there, but she has the power to put the fight wherever she wants it. Did you kind of notice that too? Like her jiu-jitsu wasn't confident?
Yes, and like to add to that, I don't even know if her wrestling is technically that solid or she's just
Just
so much
strong.
stronger and more explosive than everyone. Because like, if neither of us can wrestle, but I'm way stronger than you, I'm probably gonna get the takedown. But to add to that, I would imagine that women's wrestling is even smaller than men's wrestling in Brazil. Like we just got women's wrestling in a lot of states here as its own sport. So yeah, I just doubt how much those credentials actually matter. Thainara didn't do anything super, like she wasn't chain wrestling and hitting switches or anything like that. She kind of just, I'm stronger than you and I put you down. That'll work against Molly McCann too, though. So doesn't have too much impact on this fight.
Four more fights we're going to talk about very briefly before we get out of here. I do want to backtrack to that Morgan Charrier Nathaniel Wood fight because Billy, one of your best bets for this week, Morgan Charrier on the money line at minus 142. What did you see in this one?
Yeah, I mean, similar to what you did, he has all the finishing upside. I looked at the finish only market, but it's like minus 220 or something.
Yeah.
I would rather just play his money line. Much better striker. His takedown defense has been solid. What really sold me though is he like maybe won that split decision against Chepe Mariscal, and Mariscal has pretty much dominated everybody else. And Wood, it's weird to say that he's a tweener between 35 and 45 because it's only a 10-pound gap, but he is just not physical enough at 45 to really separate from anyone consistently. He's been good and he's gotten it done. A weird amount of power against guys you wouldn't expect him to have. I don't see that working against the much bigger, stronger, more athletic Charrier. So the floor for Charrier here is like a close decision loss because Wood sneaks some takedowns in. Anything other than that, I think he wins pretty easily. And they're both European. You would imagine the judges aren't too swayed either way. I know Wood is obviously closer as London. I don't know how many French people come to the fight or whatever. So I won't dig into that too much, but I think Charrier looks like a heavier favorite here.
The underdog that I mentioned before that we had consensus agreement on, just the slight underdog, but Kevin Holland at plus 110, plus 105 against Gunnar Nelson. Big reach advantage, 9-inch reach advantage here. Nelson also coming back from a 2-year layoff. He's 37 years old. Not sure what he's going to look like physically. And Holland has also looked much better anytime he goes to 170 than when he's been fighting at 185. His takedown defense is typically better. He looks much stronger. Had no issue on the scales on Friday. So we're in alignment here on Kevin Holland at plus 110 to get the damage done against Gunnar Nelson. Billy, break that one down.
Yeah, I mean, we almost need to talk about Kevin Holland as if they're two different people, like the Shohei Ohtani batter, Shohei Ohtani pitcher in fantasy baseball. It's Kevin Holland welterweight and Kevin Holland middleweight are separate entities. Because if he was fighting a 185-pound version of Gunnar Nelson, I'd make him like plus 250 or something in this fight to just get dominated by the grappling. People don't grapple him at 170. Like he's got the reach and the distance management, the way I talked about with Olberg. And he also seems like a very strong and explosive welterweight and can kind of just body people on the ground. So, yeah, welterweight Kevin Holland should be a significant favorite here. Middleweight Kevin Holland would be a big underdog. Fortunately, it is welterweight Kevin Holland who's fighting, so I'm all over that.
What is there, like a 60-pound weight difference between Gunnar Nelson and Reiner de Ritter? I mean, it's massive.
Yeah.
It's like a third of a person, right? It's like a third of Gunnar Nelson's size, less. Yeah, that's a big difference. Holland
or Roman Dolidze, who he fought before that, is a big dude, or Hamzat Chimaev, who he fought at kind of middleweight, but like all those dudes.
Yep, and anytime he goes back down to 170, he's just very not easily able to deny the takedowns, but he doesn't even go to the ground. He seems to stay up in the clinch, fights the hands, and escapes. I do think Gunnar Nelson will get him down here at points, maybe even win a round, get back control, etc. But Gunnar doesn't land any damage. He probably needs a submission in order to win the fight clean. Otherwise, he's going to need extended control, 10 plus minutes of control in order to win the fight without taking damage. So yeah, Holland likelier to land damage, likelier to land strikes. If he's interested in actually fighting, sometimes he gets taken down and he starts like trash talking his opponent. He knows he's in the body triangle and can't get out of it. You're just like, you could at least try to like scramble it, but he doesn't. He's just going to lay there and joke with the guy until the end of the round. So he could be a little frustrating to bet on, but I do think he has the skills at this weight class against this style of fighter, this guy who's not cutting weight, right? Gunnar is small for the weight class. It's not like he's even a full welterweight. I think Gunnar is on the lightweight side of welterweight. So big size advantage for Kevin Holland here. A couple of money ones I want to give out before we jump off for this evening. Kalen Loughran at about minus 105 against Nathan Fletcher. Talked about Nathan Fletcher when we interviewed Paddy Pimblett. We saw him impose his style in his first UFC fight. Didn't get dropped, cut open in that first fight. Ended up finding the back, though, getting the rear naked choke submission. And he has an amateur win over Kalen Loughran as well from 2018, where he mostly just controlled that fight on the mat. But in terms of physicality improvement, athleticism improvement, I think Loughran is much bigger, much stronger than he was the first time they fought. He's 2-inch reach advantage, 2 years younger. I think the striking is so clear in his favor that Fletcher almost needs to win via submission, or again, as I said, with the last fight, I think he needs like 10 plus minutes of control in order to win a decision here, because the striking is going to be one-way traffic in favor of Loughran. Projected him close to minus 116. Happy to bet Kalen Loughran up to minus 110. And then Jai Herbert against Taco Padilla. Jai has a 4-inch reach advantage. He's 4 inches taller. He's a 3-inch reach advantage. He uses his length really well. All of his losses in the UFC are to high-level competition. He almost finished Ilia Topuria. He's very powerful. But Patia's basically just high-rolled a couple of wins against guys who I think if they were in extended fights, you would have seen the skill set disparity play out, where quick finishes, not necessarily repeatable. Jai Herbert is a little bit questionable in terms of the durability. Could absolutely see Padilla clipping him or getting him down to the ground. But I do think a lot of Padilla's line being here around a pick'em price is baking in grappling upside and the fact, or the factor, that he could potentially outgrapple Jai and win this fight via grappling. I don't really think Padilla is a better grappler than Ludovic Klein. Jai Herbert probably wins that fight without a point getting taken away. You've also seen from Jai, and we've talked about this in recent weeks, you've seen Jai offensively grappling a little bit more in recent fights. I think his defensive grappling has improved, but once you see guys mixing in offensive takedowns of their own, it really shows their confidence in the grappling side of their game. So this guy's a really good kickboxer. I think the defensive grappling is leveled up to a point where he should be a favorite in this fight. Just Padilla younger, has that grappling upside. I see the arguments. I just don't think his first 2 wins in the UFC are uber repeatable. Billy, Kalen Loughran against Nathan Fletcher, Jai Herbert against Taco Padilla. Any thoughts on either of those 2 fights before we get out of here?
Not strong thoughts, but I will note they are right next to each other in price on DFS, and I needed Padilla and Loughran are right next to each other in price in DFS, and I needed one of those guys to round out my cash lineup, so I am, by all means, you have tipped me over to the Loughran side. I think it was a slight lean there anyway. Arguably, I projected them within like 0.2 points of each other when I did the projection, so it was close, but you have tipped the hand for me, so that will hopefully pay off for me in my cash lineups this weekend.
I was going to say cash, I would go Loughran. For tournaments, I would go Padilla, because I think Padilla has more finishing upside than Loughran. Not that I trust Nathan Fletcher's striking defense, and Loughran could absolutely finish him. I just think Padilla has more finishing upside than Loughran. So yeah, between the two, I think that would be the point of demarcation is tournament versus cash game. Any other thoughts, Billy, on any of these fights?
Did we hit all of them this time? I know you touched on.
We came very close to 13-fight card. And I think we might have hit every single fight
we got
on this card. And so that'll do it for us for this UFC betting preview. You can find more UFC betting content from both Billy and myself, both on actionnetwork.com and in the Action Network app. And if you'd like to instantly tail some of the bets that we discussed on today's show, look for the quick links in the podcast and the video description, or visit actionnetwork.com/bet now. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app and sign up for Action Pro for immediate access to expert picks and analysis. Best of luck with all your bets this weekend. Enjoy the violence. Thank you for listening. See you next time.